Hello and good morning, everyone. Only Positivity here. I have my coffee with me and ready to kick off the fifth podcast on this playlist that I'm attempting to launch called Elevated Thoughts. So, before diving into our new book for today, as I pursue knowledge, and life experience through traveling, fitness, photography, and things like that, one habit I've really formed is reading. Okay, and this podcast is going to be just going through some of the books I've been reading and some of those key takeaways, and relating them back to my life and some of the experience I had, and essentially applying the lessons learned to my day-to-day interactions. So, um, so we're no longer discussing the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and today we're going to go through the new book I've been reading, or I've just finished, called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. So, this book is all about being present in the moment, and not dwelling on the past or the future, but being here right now. And one thing I noticed, which is funny about books like The Four Agreements, The Power of Now, and the other books I've been reading, is that some of the concepts are very complex in nature and they're very high level, and you might have to read them over and over again. But some of them are things you've already understood or you already know. But when you hear someone else phrase them the way they phrase it clicks differently, right? And I think that's the most interesting about knowledge, is that everyone perceives it different and takes it different, and hearing them really phrase that eloquently the way authors do is astounding. So, before diving into the dialogue and all the points I've listed out, it's one thing I like to do is start with a story as of late. So, one funny thing that happened over this past week was I, I got a chance to hang out with my brother-in-law or my future brother-in-law, and he's a great dude, and he recently started a new gig, right, a new job, and it's kind of his first foot in the door in the corporate world, right? And I've been there for 5 6 years now, so you start to uh, get a gauge of those little nuances or become accustomed to them, right? Like, so oftentimes, like for example, one thing is that most bigger organizations have an internal chat system similar to like AIM, or like an instant messenger. But a lot of people will send you a ping or like an AIM chat when they're sitting a few cubes away. And you don't always have to get up and talk, even though that might be the natural thing for you to do before you step into the corporate world, or things like WebExing, having telepresence meetings, you know, having a meeting with someone on WebEx when they're right down the hall, right? Why not just pop over? And those are little nuances, and there's reasons behind all those things, right? Um, every time I need something, I don't want to stop and have a conversation with you. If I just need something, I'm going to type it out. If I need to share my screen, right, I'm going to WebEx because I can share the screen as opposed to me showing you my computer and whatnot, right? So these little nuances, and I think the humor comes in, right? The funny part comes in is like when you talk about the common areas, right, like the kitchen, and particularly the bathroom, right? So that's a funny one, right? And I think, I mean, this might be a little vulgar to be honest, but I think I personally feel like a lot of people are apprehensive, to go number two at the office, right? And I myself included at first, like I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that at the office, because I thought it was weird and stuff like that. But and my brother-in-law is starting to go through some of those things, right? He's like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it there, and I'm like, dude, one day there's going to be an emergency, and you're not going to be able to wait 8 hours to go home and take care of that, and you're just going to say, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do it right now. So that I'm trying to catch him up on those things as well. But also, one interesting thing is, when you see when you're in a stall and someone next to you is like completely destroying, right? It's like landmines going off next to you. And then they get out and they act like nothing happened. Like I pretty much want to give them a round of applause. Like, damn, dude, well done. Like you killed it in there, right? Because like TMI, like I'm not having like nothing crazy happen. Like it comes out pretty smooth for me, but other people, like it seems like they're in pain, and like they're trying really hard, and it's frustrating almost. Like I'm there with you, man. I'm your hype man. Like let's get it. So we're having those type of conversations. Me and my brother-in-law are, and it's really really funny, right, just to hear his perspective, because when you come into that corporate world, you're really like, you're very innocent and you want to change everything and you want to make it better, And then slowly you realize that like there's a lot of red tape that goes into that and things like that. But also you spend a majority of your time, if you work in an office setting, right, with those people. You spend almost more so, or more time with them than you would with your significant other or even your family sometimes, right? So I think that's, it's interesting to hear him catching on to those things, the nuances of people like using my almond milk at work. Like, one day I'll go in there, I'll feel my almond milk be very light, and I just bought it, and I'm like, so now I passive aggressively write my name all over my carton and everything like that. So it's funny. It's just funny the way things happen, right? Because when I go to work in the morning, from my podcast, like I love my coffee in the morning. So if I can't enjoy it the way I want to enjoy it, I'm not gonna be pissed off, but I feel like I'm in a position where I should be able to enjoy my coffee because I've set it up that way. But anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. So I think for let's go ahead and just jump into the points I listed out for today, right? So I'm not going to go into chapter by chapter. I'll probably just do a part one, part two of this book, right? So coming back to the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. So the first two chapters are titled "You Are Not Your Mind," and the second is "Consciousness: The Way Out of Pain." So one thing, and this is like not the most relevant quote, but the first quote I highlight in the book goes like this, and by Eckhart Tolle, right? I have spent almost 2 years sitting on park benches in a state of the most intense joy, right? So it does not explain much, but it tees up the idea of being here now. So, one thing I do, and I live in Chicago, so it's cold here majority of the year. But when it's warm, I am outside as much as possible, right? Going for runs, walks, bike rides, just kind of sitting outside, things like that, taking in the ambiance and the environment. So, relating that back to me, and I go for walks a lot, and I listen to music while I walk, right? But other times I don't, and I just take in my surroundings, I look around, and really ingest it. I listen to the sounds, I feel the way the sun hits me, I feel a breeze blowing on the back of my neck, hear the birds chirping, and I can feel my foot on the pavement with each step, right? And that's something we really don't pay attention to. We don't pay attention to all that's going on around us and really take it in, with technology constantly with us all the time, with the mind constantly moving, right? So bringing that back to a story in my life, right? Just yesterday, I hung out with two of my best friends that I haven't seen in a while, to be honest, and it's cold here, right? It's February, and so basically what we did was we met up around my apartment here, and we went to a bar, and got some food, ate some dinner there, and then we were like, okay, now what do we do, right? We've eaten, we're ready to do something, or we can just sit here, I guess, and chat. But let's move. So we attempted to go to Top Golf, and for those of you that know what Top Golf is, it's just like a driving range, a glorified driving range. Um, so there was like an hour and a half wait. So we were like, you know what, forget this. We're gonna go bowling. So we went bowling, played like 2 games of bowling, and then we were like, okay, now what do we do, right? So we went to another bar and played darts. Okay, we stayed there for a little bit. Now what do we do, right? So essentially, what we do is we come back to my apartment, we park in front, and I'm like, we're all like, we don't want to go inside again, right? And it happened to be like 50 degrees out here yesterday, so we're like, you know what? Let's just go for a walk, right? It was like 6 p.m. The sun was setting, and we went for a walk, right? We went for like a 30, 40-minute walk, and we just walked around my neighborhood, and like a couple of creeps really at night, like because we were wearing like our big jackets and everything, and no one else was out. But that was the best time of the night, right? The best time of the night was when we just walked around outside. We were just looking around at all the houses, everything around us, the different types of houses. We started talking about the type of houses we want, where we see ourselves in 5, 6 years. And this might not attest to being here now, but it's definitely like an attestation to just kind of taking in your surroundings, and that being enough. Right? Like we didn't need to go all around town last night. All we needed was to just walk around, have some good conversation, and that was honestly the most memorable part of the night for me. So, hopping off that point, right? going into personality itself. Okay, and another thing that I highlighted that Eckhart Tolle states is we have to learn to recognize our own faults. Okay, learn to recognize what is false and what is your emotions taking over versus what is truly your nature. Okay, so um, let's talk about something really relevant, right? So I have a tendency, and I think I got it from my dad, who really taught me to size people up, right? Like like listen to the way they talk, look at their body language, look in their eyes, and you can start to gauge the type of person they are, the types of weaknesses they have, the strengths, things they lean on, things like that. Whereas, I feel like my dad may have used that in a negative way. Um, I realized that I was doing the same thing a few years ago, right? You start to pick people's flaws and really using it to roast them, right? Whereas, I still kind of do that in my mind, I guess. If I need to, I have it in my back pocket, I guess. But, you know, I think the thing here is, me being in somewhat of a salesy role, I use that to really tell a story well or elevate conversation. I start to gauge, what things people are going to jive with and what things they're not going to jive with based on their word choice, like I said, their body language, their posture, things like that, right? So for me, it's pointing out a flaw, right? Noticing that I did use it in a negative way and turning it into a positive. Okay, but that might not be super relevant. Let's use an example of work. So when I used to get new projects and whatnot at work, it would be stressful, right? Because my I felt like my boss would just kind of use us as her admin, and just really, just always say yes to everything. Okay, yeah, he'll do it, she'll do it, whatever. So without really asking us if we would do it, right? So I used to get frustrated by this type of action, right? And but you realize you're in control of everything in your world, right? So I think the way to combat that is I could get frustrated, right? And that doesn't do anyone any good, right? That's my emotions taking over. But now what I do is, okay, so you're gonna give me a new project, right? So my boss says, I have a new project for you. I say, okay, I'm doing 10 things right now, right? I have 10 projects in motion. And if you want me to deliver quality on all of them, I can only do these 10 right now, okay, with what I have. So this new project is fine. I can do it. But something has to come off my plate or something has to get pushed down for later. And that is really an adult conversation to have. Um, and I realized that that was a flaw in my behavior, that I was getting upset about these things, where it's like, okay, you can just have a conversation, don't make assumptions, right? Like Don Miguel Ruiz says, and clarify. So that's how I deal with it, and that's how I elevate my emotional intelligence, right? So the moral here is that you can really begin to transform yourself once you recognize these things, once you take an objective look at yourself. But some people never get there, right? You see at work that I wouldn't say like I'm the most technically proficient, or I don't think the people who are in management or at the top are even the most technically proficient, right? They just have a higher awareness, right? They're not going to let little nuances upset them and things like that. So, pausing there and moving on to the next point. So, the next point I highlighted was that, Eckhart Tolle says the fact that in essence there is and always has been only one spiritual teaching, but it comes in many forms. This is a perspective I absolutely love, right? Because not everyone is like that. And you see this especially, right? Bringing it back to the Indian culture, right? Um, there's so many little nuances, even amongst the same religion, that will set people apart, right? The type of caste you are, the type of Indian you are. Like these are all things that set people apart. But the perspective I love is to focus on the things that unite us as opposed to the things that make us different from one another. And so, coming back to an example, right? And I'm going through wedding planning and everything right now. So, I have wedding topics on the mind. So I'll probably be sharing those with you. So, growing up, I was raised Hindu, right? So I guess I identify as Hindu. And uh, one thing that we have, right, as part of the wedding ceremony and that whole wedding weekend with all the different little events. There's so many different rituals that have a lot of different meaning, right? So the one I'm going to talk about today is an event that happens the day after the wedding, essentially where the 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 newly married couple um, is welcomed into the groom's house. So like in this example, we'll use a groom and a bride, right? A man and a woman. So the day after the wedding, the wife now will enter. There's like a little ceremony with a priest and everything like that, where the the wife will enter the groom's house like with her right foot first, and there's a coconut involved and things like that, and there's a prayer and everything like that, and it's a very important ceremony to traditional Hindu people. Okay, so but the higher level principle there is that the bride is being welcomed into the house by the groom's side. Okay, so now let's relate this to some of my friends right now, right? So I have a lot of South Indian friends, and they are of the Malayali committee. I mean, community. Sorry, the Malayali community. So they're South Indians, right? And they're predominantly Christian Catholic. Malu for short. And to all my Malu friends, I really do apologize if I'm butchering um, your population in any way. This is just the way I view it, right? So. Let's okay. So my Malu friends, they have a similar ritual, the day after the wedding ceremony, welcoming the bride into the groom's house, and I believe it's called a kacha. Um, and so these are two. So exactly what I described on the Christian Catholic side for Malayali folks is pretty much the exact same for Hindu people, right? And even though they're completely different religions, these things are have the same principle, right? It's just the semantics that are a little bit different, right? So if we can focus on those things that unite us as opposed to separating us, it really peels back a lot of layers of BS, and we can start to grow together. Okay, so hopping off that story for a little bit, going into the next quote. Those who have not found true wealth, not talking about material wealth, become beggars in this world, looking for outside scraps of pleasure. So that's another very powerful one, right? So, I think about um, the VPs and the C-level execs of everywhere I've worked, right? There's been one or two that I feel like, hey man, like this guy is commendable. This lady is commendable. He or she worked very hard to get here, and I don't think I could even do their job, right? But then, over the past couple of jobs I've had, the C level is pretty much a bunch of people who I guess are relatively smart, or they're gunners in the corporate world, but their life is in shambles, right? Every CEO that I've met, besides one, is divorced, and that might just be a luck of the draw thing. And they seem to not be taking care of their health. Um, or their fitness levels, or really have any emotional intelligence, right? They use their role to really domineer others. And so that goes to show, right? You think the VPs and the C level are very smart people, and they rightfully are. They might as well be. They may as well be, but um, they are not necessarily the outstanding citizens that we might think they are, right? So, like for example, um, like my current VP and like things like that, and then the surrounding, they only really come alive when they're talking about work, right? When they're talking about like clinical programs, or they're at a happy hour, talking about the problems they face at work. That to me is toxic, right? That there's leave work at work. If you like talking about it, and things like that, that's fine, but it consumes you, right? There's not much I can learn from these people, and that's where I draw a line. If I don't learn from you on your behavior, then you can say all you want to me, but you have to show me the right way to do things. And so tying it back to wealth, right? Material wealth um, does not really bring you mental peace or enlightenment by any means. When I was younger, I definitely wanted the nice car, the nice house, and all those things. And to some extent, I guess I do want those, but I assumed that they would bring me happiness, and I slowly but surely found out that that was truly not the case. Money may be a path to happiness, with the things that I can bring, and like for like what I'll say is not material things. So like I'm able to travel much more these days, right? I'm able to go a lot of different places, and it doesn't really hurt that much income wise. But I choose to use my money, right? I elevate my career and I constantly push harder so I can make those types of experiences, right? Not I don't work harder so I can buy that nice car. I don't work harder to buy that nice house. I work hard to make that life experience. Um, and it's interesting, right? Because you stay at the same level of poor if you do that, right? Like if I was making $60,000 and I'm able to afford, a one bedroom and a Honda Accord and certain levels of groceries, and then I I make let's say $100,000, and now I'm able to buy a Mercedes, and I step up my cost of living. I'm moving to a really nice place, so I'm at the same level of poor, right? Like there's no difference. And I still need that paycheck, maybe more so now than I did before because I'm supporting all these nice things now. So, on this tangent, I really push myself to like increase my standard of life versus my standard of living. And that can mean to you whatever it wants to mean. But essentially, I want to pursue knowledge, right? So I don't have a problem, spending money on traveling or books and things like that, or fitness, because those things bring me mental peace. And so, like, going back to this point, material wealth is only going to get us so far. So, next point. Eckhart Tolle begins to start talking about enlightenment. Okay, and this is a really, really, I guess, complex topic, but it's very interesting to discuss. And one thing he states is that an indication of enlightenment is finding your true self beyond name and form. And I think this is outstanding, right? And we see like nowadays, especially with social media, like everyone's becoming a fitness influencer. Everyone's posting pictures of themselves, things like that, and that's not wrong. I don't want to say that's wrong, but to me, it's a little vain, and it really assigns your personality and your form to your form. Right? So it really assigns what you are to your physical form, and people are way more than their physical form. And I think that's one thing to really note as we look to elevate our lives, right? So this is the main reason I don't show my face on Instagram or even on this podcast, right? It's not that I'm ashamed of it. But I'm just much more than my physical body, right? I work out every day. Like, I feel like I'm a good looking dude, but I'm way more than that, right? And so for now, what I want to share with you guys is my thoughts and my feelings, because that I believe is what really makes me me, right? One thing that does make me me is that I do intertwine fitness as a habit, right? I do work out every single day, but like I said, I'm much more than my form. I am my thoughts and feelings, and I would love to be sharing those guys with you. I mean, sharing those things with you guys on a consistent basis. So, going back to enlightenment, right? Um, Eckhart Tolle goes into saying Buddhism defines enlightenment as the end of suffering, and that's an interesting definition for me because it's incomplete, really, because it's telling you what it is by telling you what it's not. But one thing to note, and the way Eckhart Tolle describes it, is that enlightenment is not really as erroneous or complicated of a concept if you break it down, right? So, um, I really define enlightenment um, in my day to day as being able to see and think clearly. So, quick question to the audience is, right? Who's ever been bogged down by so many thoughts, right? You just can't move on to the next thing because you keep thinking, right? We call that incessant thinking, right? Just constant mental traffic, mental noise. And Eckhart Tolle really says that thinking's become a disease, right? And one thing that happens to me personally, like a personal affliction, is that I work out every day, I go to work, so I have long days to some extent, and by the time it's bedtime, I'm ready. I'm ready to go to bed. But for some reason, as soon as my head hits the pillow, I start thinking about all the things. My mind goes in a million different directions. I think about my past, future, what happened today, and I like doing that. I like reflecting, and like kind of like perspective analysising, if that's a word, right? I like to see what's out there, or what lies ahead of me. But um, enlightenment is really being able to have that on and off switch, right? Can I rise above my thought? So, one thing I'd say is like, Eckhart Tolle agrees that enlightenment is the end to incessant thinking. But how do we do that? And the whole title of the book is being here now. So right now, I'm going to do this and focus on only that, and focus on what's at hand, right? So, um, this goes back to the four agreements, even, right? So the four agreements is all about being here now, right? You have to make those four agreements in your everyday life and really be conscious about doing them. Otherwise, they might not happen. They might not manifest themselves the way you thought, but you are in control of that, right? You're in control of being here now. And the control comes in is when you're able to shut it off when you want to. Are you able to stop thinking when you want to? So I'll say I'm not, but I'm getting better. Okay. And so one thing I've started to do is meditate. And one meditation technique that I've been reading about is just imagining the color black. So that seems easy enough. Just close your eyes and imagine the color black. So if you guys can do that for 15 seconds, I will applaud you because um, after about 30 seconds of thinking about the color black, a bunch of other thoughts start coming in my mind, and my mind is running now. And I have to really snap back and say, hey, come back and think about the color black and start all over again. So it's really tough, but that's all about being here now. That's how you control the incessant thinking, right? So, one thing that I mentioned is that, like I'll start reflecting on the past. Okay? And so reflection is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that like thinking is bad. But um, when you do these things, when you reflect on the past, you have to make sure that it's not distorting your view of the present because that's not only unfair to you, but unfair to others as well. Okay, so I think I've gone through this example before, but social media has been a very like weird platform for me, right? So like I was talking about that, with my previous relationships and things like that, I always felt like my significant other was kind of just doing it for the gram, right? Oh, like I'm here, I gotta post this. Oh, I'm here, I gotta post this. Oh, I'm here, let me tell this person I'm here. And like that was like not something I really jive with, right? I'm just like, be here right now. Like, talk to me, enjoy, look around, take in the sights with your naked eye. You don't have to worry about taking a picture of it. If you like, you can, but like, you don't have to worry about sharing with everyone right then, right? So, you know, it was easy for me to kind of throw that onto my current fiance as we developed in our preliminary days. But as I'm learning things, I decided this time I'm gonna ask the question, right? I'm not just gonna let it pent up and judge someone for their habits. So I asked, I say, okay, what do you use social media for? Why do you use it the way you do? And she said, I use it to capture memories because of the different filters on Instagram and Snapchat and things like that on Facebook, the different videos that are there, recipe ideas. I use it for these positive things. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Um, and then it makes sense because we're going through memories now on Instagram of all the trips we've been on together, and they're captured differently than the way I capture them, like by taking a picture, right? There's filters on them, there's different notes on them, there's like little emojis on them, and it's really cool to see the way she's capturing all of our memories. And I'm like, wow, that's an interesting way to do it. And I essentially just asked that question and cleared up those assumptions, right? So what we're talking about now, though, is reflecting on the past, right? It's not a bad thing, but you have to look at your past from an objective view and not let it distort your lens of the present. So, um, as we come to the conclusion here, there's a couple powerful pieces that Eckhart Tolle really goes into, and I think it's easy for someone to think of someone who's enlightened as like a guru or some dude wearing like rags and just like kind of floating around. And I'm being ignorant, but like what I'm saying, like some yogi, right? Somewhere who's just like constantly talking like Morpheus all the time. But Eckhart really squashes that through the next quote, right? If the price of peace was lowering your consciousness and the price of stillness a lack of vitality and alertness, then they would not be worth having, right? So I translate it as this. If you have to enter like a trance-like state, like getting super stoned or getting drunk to be at peace, then it's not practical. So, how do you do that? You attain peace through heightening your consciousness, right? Being here now, being closer to everything, not pulling back, not saying, okay, I don't care about this because I just don't care, right? But you don't care about this because you've reasoned everything through, right? This is if what is going to happen if this upsets me? Nothing good is going to happen. So now I want to think clearly and I want to think of an action plan on how to remediate, right? So um, going back through it, right? If the price of peace was lowering your consciousness and the price of stillness a lack of vitality and alertness, then they would not be worth having, right? So I read it again because it's so powerful. And because we see a lot of people, grinding it out through the week, going out on the weekends, being someone else, right? That is a bad extreme to have, and it can lead to a lot of toxic behavior. Find the balance. Find the ability to stay conscious enough to ingest a potentially negative stimulus, let it process, and let it come out positive, right? And that to me is a solution. Okay, so a solution that Eckhart Tolle really brings is that next time you do something simple, right? Extremely simple, like let's say washing your hands, just pay attention to it. Pay attention to the way the soap, forms bubbles on your hands. Pay attention to the way the water cups in your hands and falls off your hands. And then pay attention to the way you dry your hands and things like that. Monitor your breathing from time to time, right? Monitor your breathing going in through your nose and feel it as you exhale through your mouth. One thing I do is, and I'll leave with this. One thing I do when I come back from my friend's houses, at night, if we're hanging out late, is, as I'm driving back, I shut off all the music. And it's later, so there's generally not as much traffic. And I have the road to myself for the most part. So I turn off all the music and I pay attention to the road and I listen to my car, right? And I just be there in that moment. And there's something extremely relaxing about that. You're away from all the normal stimulus in your day, and you can just focus on what's going on in that moment. And that to me is the path to enlightenment, right? Just being there right in that moment, no worries, no qualms, not letting the past or the future affect you, but just being there right in that moment, and not worrying about any of the incessant thinking that might be coming your way. So that being said, that about wraps up all the points I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave any comments or feedback that you may have. Tune in for the podcast next week, and remember, only positivity. Thanks, guys.